light language symbols on drum light is information that contains the codes of creation. Geometry is the foundational structure for art, science, music, and architecture. Its images, codes, shapes are found in DNA, crystals, atoms, mandalas, hieroglyphics, and pyramids. The language of light is a sacred geometry produced by vibration, which we just saw in the Semitic video. The light language is a powerful sacred gift that gives us purposeful expression of love from the Creator. And one thing that I found out when I went to Egypt is the Egyptians themselves don't know how to read hieroglyphs. Okay, now that kind of really blew me away. I wasn't expecting that. They got to go to Chinese, Asian people, and Germans to learn how to read hieroglyphs. And I was like, huh? When I started digging into it a little bit deeper, I found out something. In ancient times, during the time of Zep-Tepi and the founding of the New Kingdom, the only people that were allowed to learn hieroglyphs were the gods. It was the light language, or the language of light. The only people allowed to even pronounce them out loud vocally were the gods, were these Anunnaki Atlantean people. Then you had another level, which were the politician level people, they kind of called them. They had the capability of understanding some of the glyphs, not all of them, only some of them, and the Arabic. Then you had the working class people who were only allowed to learn Arabic, nothing else. So you already see the separation there going on, the segregation of the classes. Thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago, they were already putting the system together to enslave us mentally and physically. Along with the list of ancient gods we find encoded in the grid stories of the creation of the human experiment, we find Zep-Tepi. Within the void called time and space, there are those who move from reality to reality, creating the programs in which souls experience. The Matrix is in the Bible. That's where they got the name for that movie from the Bible. That's where it comes from. It's mentioned in there 5 times. The Matrix. You know what they say the Matrix is? A womb. And the only way to be born, in other words, the only way to achieve a higher level of consciousness and escape the womb is you have to be born through that womb. In other words, you have to develop another dimension of thought and understanding before you can escape the system that's been put on top of you. And that's where the Matrix comes from. It's actually listed there many, many times. So, Zep-Tepi refers to the first time, a remote epoch prior to the ancient Egypt, in which the place of awakening and the place of forgetfulness in the beginning and the end, in all everything. It is the home of the creational forces, those who bend and shape realities through sound, light, and color. Let me read that again. Those who bend and shape realities through sound, light, and color. What produces sound, light, and color? TVs. Thank you. They understand this stuff, man. They're using it against you every single day, and your kids as well. For generation after generation, they've manipulated the system, and now we're in the technological age where they're using it right through your phone screens, okay? They understand the light frequencies that have a direct effect on human consciousness. They understand the G technology, that's the microwaves that are being received by this device. Do you know that I can send a piggyback encoded message on a microwave frequency? Cell phone towers work because you have these cells of towers. Okay, so you have a tower here, a tower here, a tower here, a tower here. It's in the shape of a cell over many miles. And as you drive, it sends out a microwave frequency, which is picked up by your device. And your device sends back a microwave frequency, connecting microwave frequency back to that tower. And as you drive, it passes from tower to tower, and it never stays on the same tower. Okay? Now, if I wanted to, I can very easily embed or encode a frequency on that microwave signal that can be picked up at 5 to 8 hertz by your own brain, and I can talk to you. Zep-Tepi is Genesis. Zep means time, Tepi means first. Let me say that again. Zep means time, Tepi means first. Together they are the first time, or the golden age of alchemy, where the gods moved through the void and created grids of our reality. We know them as the Egyptian gods highlighted by Osiris, who is associated with the Orion, the god of resurrection and rebirth. They allegedly came to this reality based on the precession of the equinoxes approximately 12,500 years ago. I think it's a little bit older than that, but that last part was added by another author. But the part that I wrote at the top there is very clear to understand. This information is really powerful stuff. They're utilizing this information against us on a daily basis, but it can be used in the opposite direction. This is why we have to learn this stuff. We have to understand it so we can utilize it in our own lives. In the beginning, Noahs, which is in ancient times called God, created a second Noahs who becomes a craftsman and creates the world. Noahs too creates 7 powers and 7 spheres around what will become the earth. The spheres have control over what will be earth. They control what we know as destiny. Then 7 spheres are the moon, sun, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. Here is the beginning of astrology. Noahs too sets the spheres in motion and begins life on earth. You're talking about the seed of life. It's an allegory. They're utilizing all those names as an allegory, but we're talking about this seed of life, which is in the base of the spine of every organic human being or any organic living creature on this planet. These cells formulate and stay there for your entire life, and that formation, the seed. The seed then grows. This is through osmosis. You see here, you see the single cell. You see the circle, obviously. You see what a single cell looks like. This is as above, so below. Sacred geometry is inside of our bodies. It's part of our actual physiology. Our biological avatars are created via this method. As you see, you go into 2, 4, and then you end up with a seed, and then you end up with the flower. Inside the flower of life, you have something called the 64-grid tetrahedron. I could put 64 tetrahedrons inside of a flower of life, which becomes a 3-dimensional substructure. Inside of that substructure of a 64-grid tetrahedron, you have something called the vector equilibrium. And the vector equilibrium is a source of unlimited power at every Planck unit in space-time. Unlimited free energy surrounds us and is inside of us at any given moment in space and time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. All we have to do is tap into it, which we do know how to tap into it. I told you one of the machines yesterday, the Bloom server, has the capability of extracting electromagnetic waves out of the atmosphere and converting them into electricity. But there's even another level that we can get to extract that energy, which is something that I'm working on at my tech company. Earlier we saw this here with the flower of life, atomically somehow etched into this column at the Temple of Osiris, dating back over 30,000 years. Over 30,000 years ago, they knew about this flower of life. They knew about the technology. They knew about the implications. They knew about the womb. They knew about the vesica piscis. They knew about the whole way that this formation converts into a 3-dimensional substructure that creates this entire grid that we live on called the matrix. No matter what civilization you go to around the world, you're going to find the flower of life. In the creation myth, we are introduced to astrology and the influence of the planets upon man, and from which man is expected to rise above. We have dualism, a God of the heavens and one who created earth. We see an idea of man as a son or part of God. We have man being given the power of creation. You create your own reality. The idea that man has a dual nature is one in heaven, non-material, soul and spirit, and the physical in the world of matter, the body, and the fall, leaving from heaven to be with nature. In other words, the universal consciousness deciding, I want to experience the third dimension from this perspective, from that perspective. I'm going to go down, I'm going to separate myself into trillions and trillions of entities, and I'm going to experience what it's like to be a human being in the third dimension. I'm going to experience what it's like to be a cat, a dog, a blade of grass, even a rock. And I'm going to collect that data and that information from all those perspectives. To what agenda and what end, I'm not exactly sure. But the universe is on a data collection mission. And the reason why I know that is because, as above, so below. Our bodies, like I said before, our brain is collecting information on a consistent basis. 24 hours a day. This is our consciousness, where we house it. The universal consciousness is going to be doing the same exact thing, collecting information. Why? It's essentially percepting or perceiving this realm from this perspective for its own personal understanding and gain of what it means to be a 3-dimensional being. That's literally what it's all about. And it's like a creator drops a pebble into a little stream, and you see the ripples go out. We're in that ripple. We're in the ripples. And it's just like, I hate to say it, it's like a massive, massive experiment. And it's to see how it develops, how it feels, how it can sense things, how these individual arms of itself respond to situations. And it's a data collection. I think the ultimate goal, in my opinion, is to see if this experiment, this ripple, will turn back and come back to what we call unconditional love. Will it continue to relate itself as a yin and a yang, and separation and division? Or will at some point universal love take over and end this experiment? We have to wait and see. to wait and see. All things in all universes move according to law, and the law which regulates the movement of the planets is no more immutable than the law which regulates the material expressions of man. One of the greatest of all cosmic laws is that which is responsible for the formation of man as a material being. The great aim of the mystery schools of all ages has been to reveal the workings of the law which connect man the material and man the spiritual. The connecting link between the material man and the spiritual man is the intellectual man. For the mind partakes of both material and immaterial qualities. The aspirant for knowledge, for higher knowledge, must develop in the intellectual side of his nature, so strengthen his will that it is able to concentrate all powers of his being on and in the plane he desires. The great search for light, life, and love only begins on the material plane. Carried to its ultimate and final goal is complete oneness with the universal consciousness. The foundation in the material is the first step. Then comes the higher goal of spiritual attainment. In the following pages, I will give an interpretation of the Emerald Tablets and their secret, hidden in the esoteric meanings. Concealed in the words of Thoth are many meanings that do not appear on the surface. The light of knowledge brought to bear on the tablets will open many new fields of thought. Read and be wise, but only if the light of your own consciousness awakens a deep-seated understanding, which is an inherent quality of the soul. And so, when you read my book, Compendium of the Emerald Tablets, you're going to get a lot of understanding in that book. I'm just telling you, I know a lot of you guys, everybody here pretty much almost has it. But if you go through that book and really analyze it and break it down and study it, and study the concepts that are in there, along with reading Thoth's Emerald Tablet words and verses itself, you're going to find yourself going to another level spiritually and consciously. And you're going to find out that the real key to this whole thing is all about unconditional love. That's the only way to get to the next level. The universe runs on natural law. So you have the principle of mentalism, the principle of correspondence, the principle of vibration, the principle of polarity, the principle of rhythm, the principle of cause and effect, and the principle of gender. These principles are laws that cannot be escaped. These are laws that literally operate and mitigate this entire third dimension and how the universal consciousness and the law of attraction interacts with each and every single one of us. The principle of mentalism is that the universe is all mind. What does that mean? Everything begins as a thought, like I told you yesterday. Everything begins as a thought. So like I said, how do you come up with, how does thought turn into reality? You start with a conscious plane. So you think of something, like I said yesterday, the cell phone. You think about the phone, what it would look like, what it would feel like, what size it would be, what functions it would have on a conscious platform. Then you take it to a two-dimensional platform. So in a two-dimensional platform, you give it to a CAD designer. Hey, this is my idea. This is what I'm looking to create. The CAD designer then puts it into a two-dimensional format for you. And then once you get it where you want it, the CAD designer then does what? Here, take it from this two-dimensional platform and put it in a three-dimensional reality by giving it to an engineer. Now the engineer will convert that thought into a three-dimensional physical reality that can be utilized as a tool. This is how we manifest things every single day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Like I said, nothing would be here if we didn't have this power of manifestation. The proof that we are gods is in the fact that when you look around, there's things here. If we weren't gods, there would be nothing here. We are creators. We are co-creators in this reality. And it's very important to understand that. Let's look at the brain. In the Matrix, they called, the savior Neo. Did you think that was a coincidence? They're talking about the neocortex, where we think, talk, move, create, and learn. The neocortex, Latin for new bark or new rind, also known as the neophallium, is the mantle, or the new mantle. It's part of the brain in mammals. It is the outer layer of the cerebral hemispheres and made up of 6 layers, labeled 1 through 6. The neocortex is part of the cerebral cortex, basically which are the cortical parts of the limbic system. In humans, it is involved in higher functions such as sensory perception, generation of motor commands, spatial reasoning, conscious thought and language, and you thought it was just a name. There's lessons and everything out there. And a lot of you heard me say it before, I believe that we're living in a fractal holographic universe. This universe is holographic by nature. It's not just me saying this. Professor James Gates, who used to be the presidential scientific advisor to President Obama, he was a professor at the University of Maryland. He's now at another university, but he's an expert in something called supersymmetry and theoretical physics, okay? And he put together a team of some of the top physicists, quantum physicists in the world. These are the brightest and biggest minds on this planet to figure out what is this soup that we're operating and living in? What is this universe? What is this space-time? What is it? They discovered a group of codes called Adinkra codes. Now, these Adinkra codes, if you remember the Dogon tribe I had up there a little while ago, the Dogon tribe knew all about these Adinkra codes. They call it part of sleepy time, the dream world. What does that tell you? They have these codes drawn or etched into fabric and designs, and they're called Adinkras, but they're really numerical representations of something called error-correcting codes. And these error-correcting codes that they knew for thousands of years, which we just now rediscovered, are the same codes that run search engine browsers and websites. So the same codes that operate your computer, your websites and browsers for Google searches and all of that, and the websites you like to visit, are the same codes that operate this entire ether of space-time. We're living inside a program. The ancients was right. The Bible's right. We're living in the creation. I'm just telling you the method used for the creation. The method used for this creation is a hologram. Most likely by a dodecahedron on the exterior, projecting in a three-dimensional holographic vision of electromagnetic waves. And these waves emanate from this dodecahedron into the center. Consciousness interacts with these electromagnetic waves. Consciousness actually slows down electromagnetism and collapses it into something that we call solid matter, to give us the illusion that there's something actually here. When you're not looking at something, it doesn't even exist. I know it's hard to really understand that. Like a video game. Okay, let me give you a video game, for example. If you're playing Donkey Kong, remember that video game? It's one of the oldest games, okay? Or Pac-Man, one of the two. No matter what happens, as you move to the next screen, as you move to left or right, the next screen appears. Even in Donkey Kong, you got to go up these ladders or whatever these things are, these ramps. You don't see the top of the ramp when you start the game. You only see the top of the ramp as you defeat certain levels, and as you get closer to what you think is the top begins to appear. When you're not at the top doesn't exist on the screen. It's just an electromagnetic wave. It's not real. It only becomes real when you need it to become real. Consciousness is a wave function, just like in mathematics. And wave functions collapse information into a particular outcome or a particular answer. And so your conscious wave function collapses electromagnetic waves into something we call solid matter. How? By slowing down the frequency or vibration of those waves. All that matter truly is electromagnetism that has been slowed down. That's all it is. If you slow it down enough, you can collapse it into a physical object or something that we think is a physical object. Like I said before, the only thing stopping my hand from going through this table is the repulsion of the electromagnetic waves in my fingers repelling the same waves that are inside this table. But if I were to phase shift the atomic frequency of the atoms in my hand to the same frequency of the atoms in this table, I can pass my hand right through this table with no problem.